The first salvo of improvised ammunition erupted from the Indomitable's modified tractor, beam systems like a shotgun blast from the gods themselves, chunks of processed or twisted metal fragments, and pieces of destroyed mining equipment streaked across space at velocities that turned them into relativistic projectiles capable of punching through battleship armor. The lead Cathara hunting pack never saw it coming. Their bioships, designed to withstand energy weapons and conventional missiles, had no defense against tons of raw matter traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The improvised projectiles tore through their formations like bullets through tissue paper, shredding organic hulls and devastating the alien vessel's internal systems. "Direct hits across the board," reported Gunnery Sergeant Williams, her voice filled with savage satisfaction. 7 enemy ships destroyed, 4 more heavily damaged and falling out of formation. Colonel Chen watched the tactical display with the cold focus of a predator. The first hunting pack was neutralized, but 2 more were closing in on the refugee convoy from different angles. The Cathara hive mind was adapting to their unconventional tactics, spreading the remaining ships out to minimize the effectiveness of area effect weapons. "Reload and target the second formation," she ordered. "Chief Murphy, how are our systems holding up?" Murphy's response crackled with static from an overloaded communication system. "Colonel, the tractor beam emitters are running at 200% of rated capacity. The magnetic field generators are starting to show stress fractures, and I'm getting warning lights across half my control board. But she hold together for at least 2 more volleys. That's all I need." "Chief, outstanding work." The Indomitable began its second attack run, weaving through a storm of return fire from the surviving Cathara ships. The aliens had learned from the first exchange and were now targeting the human vessel's improvised weapon systems, sending streams of bioenergy that attempted to disrupt the tractor beam modifications, but they were fighting humans now. And humans had been improvising weapons since they first picked up sticks and stones on the African savanna. "Dr. Patel, I need you to analyze the enemy targeting patterns. Are they focusing on specific systems?" The ship's medical officer, now serving as an impromptu tactical analyst, bent over his hastily reconfigured instruments. "Colonel, they're targeting our tractor beam emitters, but they're using predictable firing solutions. If we could introduce some chaos into our approach vector." "Hayes, you heard the doctor. Give me evasive maneuvers that would make a drunken comet jealous." Lieutenant Commander Hayes grinned despite the desperate situation. "Aye, ma'am." Engaging what my flight instructor used to call aggressive uncertainty, the Indomitable began to dance through space with a grace that defied its massive size. Hayes pulled the ship through barrel rolls, sudden decelerations, and impossible course corrections that turned their approach into something resembling a 3-dimensional drunkard's walk. The Cathara targeting systems, designed for predictable attack patterns, struggled to maintain locks on a vessel that seemed to be violating several laws of physics through pure human stubbornness. "Second volley ready," Williams announced. Loading configuration includes 3 large chunks of refined titanium steel, composite, and approximately 2 tons of miscellaneous debris. "Fire when ready?" "Gunnery Sergeant." The second wave of improvised ammunition scattered across space like a meteor shower, each projectile following a slightly different trajectory thanks to Hayes' erratic piloting. The Cathara ships attempted to evade, but their biomechanical hulls were designed for coordinated fleet actions, not individual dogfighting. The results were spectacular and devastating. The largest chunk of titanium steel punched completely through a Cathara heavy cruiser, emerging from the other side trailing fragments of alien biomatter and sparking electrical systems. Smaller projectiles peppered the enemy formation, each impact causing cascading system failures as the alien ship's organic components tried to heal damage faster than it was being inflicted. "Second formation is broken," Santos reported. "Remaining ships are withdrawing to regroup with the main fleet." Chion allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning her attention to the final threat. The third hunting pack had reached the refugee convoy and was beginning its attack on the defenseless civilian ships. On the communication screen, Captain Vextar's crystalline face showed the strain of watching his charges come under fire. Captain Chun, they're targeting our largest transports first. We're trying to maintain our defensive formation, but without weapons. Hold your position, Captain. We're en route. Jin cut the communication and studied the tactical situation. The third Cathara formation had learned from the fate of their companions and had spread their ships across a much wider area, making them difficult to target with area effect weapons. Worse, they were using the refugee ships as cover, positioning themselves so that any missed shots would potentially hit civilian vessels. It was a tactically sound decision that showed the hive mind was adapting to human unpredictability. Unfortunately for the Cathara, they had just made their biggest mistake of the war. They had threatened innocent civilians in front of a human military officer. Chief Murphy, I need one more modification to our tractor beam system. Can you reverse the polarity and create repulsion fields instead of attraction fields? There was a long pause before Murphy's voice came back over the intercom. Colonel, that's not how physics works. Tractor beams pull, they don't push. The gravitational manipulation matrices aren't designed for... Chief, Chun interrupted, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who had never accepted the word impossible. I'm not asking you to rewrite the laws of physics. I'm asking you to make them work in our favor. Can you do it or not? Another pause, then a chuckle that sounded like it came from deep in Murphy's Irish heritage. Colonel, give me 5 minutes and I'll either give you repulsion beams or blow us all to Kingdom Come Trying. Either way, it'll be interesting. While Murphy worked his engineering magic, Chen opened a communication channel to the refugee convoy. But instead of contacting Captain Vextar, she addressed the entire civilian fleet. Attention all civilian vessels, this is Colonel Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. I know you're scared. I know this situation looks hopeless. But I need you to trust me for the next few minutes and follow my instructions exactly. The response came from dozens of different species, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and hope across the communication frequencies. Colonel, this is Transport Captain Delex of the Andromedans. We're carrying 8,000 refugees from the Proxima colonies. We'll do whatever you need. Captain Young Hai of the Centauran merchant vessel Golden Harmony. 12,000 civilians aboard, including younglings. We're with you, Colonel. Freighter Captain Raxus of the Granite Lords. Our ship carries the last survivors of the Kepler orbital cities. We await your orders. The voices continued, representatives of a dozen species placing their trust in a single, human officer who had already achieved the impossible twice in one day. Qian felt the weight of their faith, but instead of crushing her, it lifted her up and reminded her why humans fought so hard for people they had never met. All civilian vessels, I need you to move into a tight formation, minimum safe distance between ships. When I give the signal, I need you to activate your emergency thrusters and move away from the Cathara ships as fast as possible. Don't worry about maintaining formation. Just get clear. Colonel, Captain Vextar's voice was steady despite the circumstances. If we break formation, the Cathara will be able to target us individually. Surely it would be safer to. Captain, with respect, I didn't ask for a tactical analysis. I asked for trust. Can you give me that? Vextar's response came immediately. Yes, Colonel Chun, all ships will comply with your instructions. Murphy's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible over the sound of overloaded systems and jury-rigged equipment. Colonel, I've got your repulsion beams online. The system is completely unstable and will probably explode after one use, but it should work. What exactly are we pushing? Chun smiled as the final piece of her plan fell into place. Chief, we're going to push the Cathara ships into each other at high velocity. It turns out that when biomechanical vessels collide, they tend to merge into something that can't fight. Effectively, the Indomitable approached the battle between the refugee convoy and the third Cathara hunting, packed with the steady determination of a freight. TRAon heading downhill. The alien ships had arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional formation that allowed them to attack the civilian vessels while providing mutual, Support and defense. It was a textbook. Example of superior tactics and overwhelming firepower being used to destroy a defenseless enemy. It should have been a massacre, but the Cathara had never fought humans before. And they didn't understand that humans saw impossible odds as a personal challenge rather than a reason to surrender. All civilian vessels. Execute evasive maneuvers now. Chun ordered. The refugee convoy exploded into motion as thousands of ships activated their emergency thrusters simultaneously. The formation dissolved into organized chaos as vessels of every size and configuration scattered in all directions. The first Cathara attack wave hit the Indomitable like a tsunami of death. Dozens of bioships, each one the size of a city block, opened fire with weapons that defied conventional physics. Streams of liquid darkness that ate through armor plating. Crystalline projectiles that phased through shields and exploded inside their targets. Energy beams that seemed to drain the very life force from anything they touched. Colonel Chun gripped her command chair as the ship bucked and rolled under the impact. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the lights flickered as power systems struggled to compensate for the alien assault. Shields down to 60%, reported Lieutenant Santos from the defense station. These weapons are unlike anything in our databases. They're targeting our ship's molecular structure directly. Then we adapt? Chun replied calmly, her fingers dancing across her control panel. Chief Murphy, reroute power from non-essential systems to forward shields. Gunnery Sergeant Williams, return fire. All weapons, full spread. The Indomitable's response was immediate and devastating. Plasma cannons erupted in synchronized fury, painting space with streams of superheated matter that could melt through a battleship's hull in seconds. Nuclear missiles streaked toward their targets, each one carrying enough destructive power to crack a small moon. And behind it all, the ship's point defense systems created a deadly web of intersecting fire that turned incoming projectiles into expanding clouds of vaporized metal. The human weapons tore through the first wave of attackers like a hot knife through butter. Cathara bioships exploded in brilliant flashes of organic matter and alien technology, their death screams echoing across subspace frequencies that made coalition sensor operators physically ill, but for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Cathara fleet began to close in from all sides, their formation shifting into a 3-dimensional sphere with the Indomitable at its center. Colonel, we're completely surrounded, Major Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the impossible situation. Enemy vessels are maintaining position at maximum weapons range. They're trying to overwhelm us with sustained fire. Chun studied the tactical display with the focused intensity of a chess master. The Cathara were fighting exactly as their psychological profiles suggested, like a hive mind that valued efficiency and overwhelming force over individual courage or innovative tactics. They had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the logical pattern of retreat when outnumbered. They're making a mistake, she said quietly. They think in terms of probability and statistics, but humans don't fight with mathematics. We fight with pure, stubborn meanness. She opened a channel to the engine room. Chief Murphy, I need everything you can give me. And I mean everything. Murphy's voice crackled back through the intercom, barely audible over the roar of the ship's overcharged reactors. Colonel, I can give you 115% of rated power for approximately 8 minutes before the containment fields collapse. After that, we'll either bury a fast-moving cloud of radioactive gas or we'll have found somewhere safer to be. 8 minutes will do perfectly, Chun replied. Helm, plot a course directly through the enemy formation. Maximum acceleration. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, the ship's pilot, was a veteran of 3 wars and had never questioned an order in 12 years of service. But this time he had to ask, "Ma'am, did you say through the formation?" "You heard correctly, Commander. The Cathara expect us to either try to break out of their encirclement or to fight a defensive battle from the center. They're not expecting us to ram our way through their lines at ramming speed." Dr. Patel's voice came over the internal communication system from the medical bay. Colonel, at those acceleration levels, the crew will experience forces that could cause internal injuries, even with our inertial compensators. Chun's response was swift and final. Then strap yourselves in and try to stay conscious. We're about to show these aliens why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Indomitable leaped forward like a thoroughbred racehorse, its engines pushing the ship far beyond its designed operational limits. The acceleration was brutal, even with the ship's artificial gravity and inertial dampening systems working overtime. The crew felt like they were being pressed into their seats by the weight of a collapsing star. The Cathara response was immediate and predictable. Hundreds of bioships adjusted their positions to intercept the charging human vessel, their weapon systems charging for a concentrated barrage that would reduce the Indomitable to its component atoms. But Colonel Chun had spent her entire career studying her enemy's weaknesses, and she had identified the Kithara's greatest vulnerability, their reliance on collective thinking. The alien hive mind was incredibly efficient at coordinating large-scale operations, but it struggled to adapt to rapid, individualistic decision-making. Gunnery Sergeant Williams, target the lead Kithara ship with a full nuclear spread. But don't fire until we're within 5,000 meters of their hull. Williams looked up from her weapons console with surprise. Ma'am, at that range, our own nuclear detonations will damage us severely. That's the point, Sergeant. The Kithara can't understand why anyone would deliberately put themselves in harm's way. They'll assume we're making a targeting error and adjust their defensive posture accordingly. The human ship continued its suicidal charge toward the enemy lines, weaving between incoming fire with an agility that shouldn't have been possible for a vessel of its size. Hayes proved why he was considered one of Earth's finest pilots, threading the ship through a maze of energy beams and projectile weapons with moves that would have made a fighter pilot jealous. 4,000 meters and closing, he reported. Through gritted teeth. Weapons ready, Williams confirmed. 3,000 meters. The lead Kithara ship began to shift its defensive array, just as Chun had predicted. The alien hive mind was recalculating the human vessel's approach vector, trying to understand why it wasn't changing course to avoid mutual destruction. 2,000 meters. Colonel, they're repositioning their forward shields? Exactly as expected, Chun said with grim satisfaction. Fire. The nuclear missiles erupted from the Indomitable's launch tubes at point-blank range, streaking across the tiny gap between the ships in fractions of a second. The Kithara vessel, caught completely off guard by the suicidal attack, took the full force of the nuclear barrage against its reposition shields. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The lead bioship disintegrated in the expanding sphere of plasma and radioactive fire, its death throwing the entire Kithara formation into momentary confusion as the hive mind struggled to process what had just happened. But the Indomitable paid a heavy price for its victory. The nuclear blast, detonated at such close range, sent shockwaves through the ship's hull that knocked out half the electrical systems and cracked the main structural support beams. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and the smell of ozone and burning circuits filled the air. Damage report, Chun ordered, pulling herself back into her chair after being thrown across the bridge by the blast. Forward shields are completely down, Santos reported, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. We've lost main power to weapons array 2, and the port engine is operating at only 30% efficiency. But we're through their lines, Hayes added with something approaching awe in his voice. The gap in their formation is holding. They're trying to regroup, but their coordination is shot. Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning her attention to the main objective. On the long-range sensors, she could see the refugee convoy, thousands of civilian ships carrying the survivors of conquered worlds toward the safety of Coalition space. And closing in on them from 3 directions were additional Kithara hunting packs, each one more than capable of destroying the defenseless transports. Major Rodriguez, what's our weapons status? We've still got 60% of our plasma cannons online, plus a full complement of conventional missiles. The nuclear arsenal is depleted, but we can still fight. June nodded and opened a communication channel to the refugee convoy. The face that appeared on her screen was that of Captain Vexstar, a Centaurian merchant who had volunteered to lead the evacuation effort. Captain Chan, thank the stars you made it through. But I must warn you, we're detecting multiple enemy formations converging on our position. Even with your assistance, I don't see how we can fight our way to safety. Captain Vexstar, how many ships in your convoy? 2,347 vessels, ranging from personal shuttles to heavy freight haulers. We're carrying civilians from 19 different worlds. Chun did the calculations in her head. A convoy that large, with ships of varying speeds and defensive capabilities, would never outrun a dedicated pursuit force. In a straight chase, the Kithara would pick them off one by one until nothing remained but drifting wreckage. But humans had never believed in fighting fair. Captain, I need you to do something that's going to sound completely insane. I need you to stop your ships and form a defensive sphere with the largest vessels on the outside and the smallest in the center. Vexstar's crystalline features registered shock and confusion. The Kithara armada stretched across the void like a plague of metal locusts, their biomechanical ships pulsing with sickly green energy that made veteran spacers sick just to look at. Admiral HFY of the Galactic Coalition watched the tactical display with growing horror, as yet another defense fleet vanished from the screen, consumed by the relentless advance of humanity's newest enemy. Sir, the Andromedans are requesting immediate evacuation, reported Lieutenant Commander Yala, her usually steady voice cracking under the strain. They've lost 80% of their fleet in the last 6 hours. HFY's forearms trembled as he gripped the command rail. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had never witnessed such devastation. The Kithara weren't just winning, they were erasing entire civilizations from existence, turning proud warships into twisted biomass that fed their ever-growing fleet. What about the human reinforcements? He asked, though he already knew the answer would bring little comfort. The Earth Defense Force is sending everything they have, but ... Yala hesitated, checking her readings again. It's just one ship, sir. A single heavy cruiser called the Indomitable. A bitter laugh escaped HFY's throat. One ship, against an armada that had already consumed 17 star systems. The humans either had a death wish or knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Across the command deck, species from a dozen worlds worked frantically at their stations. The Centaurians with their crystalline bodies sang mathematical equations in harmony. The gaseous nebulans flickered through probability calculations in their containment suits. Even the stoic granite lords, beings carved from living stone, showed cracks of stress in their geological faces. Sir, incoming transmission from the Indomitable, announced the communications officer. A young vegan whose blue skin had gone pale with fear. Put them through, HFY ordered, straightening his command uniform despite the circumstances. The hologram that materialized before him showed a human woman in her mid-30s, wearing the distinctive black and silver uniform of Earth's elite forces. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe military cut, and her green eyes held a coldness that reminded HFY of deep space itself. Most unsettling of all was the complete absence of fear on her face. Admiral HFY, I presume. I'm Colonel Sarah Chung, commanding officer of the Indomitable. We're here to help. Colonel Chung, HFY replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. With all due respect to Earth's military prowess, you're facing an enemy that has destroyed fleets 10 times your size. Perhaps it would be wiser to join the evacuation efforts. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered behind her eyes. Admiral, my species didn't crawl out of the gravity well of a death world just to run when things get difficult. Where do you need us? Before HFY could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. The tactical display updated to show a new wave of Kithara ships emerging from hyperspace, their numbers doubling the already overwhelming force. They're targeting the refugee convoys, Yala reported, her voice rising with panic. civilian ships from Proxima, Kepler, and New Geneva. They won't make it to the evacuation points in time. Zexhai closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. When he opened them again, Colonel Chin was still watching him with that unnerving calm. "Colonel, those convoys contain over 3 million non-combatants. Our escort fleet is already engaged with the main Kithara force. If you were to attempt an intercept, we'd be outnumbered roughly 3,000 to 1, Sarah finished. I've faced worse odds. The Admiral's disbelief must have shown on his face because Sarah's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so cold. Admiral, let me tell you something about humans. We're persistence hunters. Back on our homeworld, our ancestors didn't have claws or fangs or thick armor. What we had was the ability to keep going when every other species would have given up and died. We chased our prey across continents until they collapsed from exhaustion. We turned the most hostile planet in known space into a garden. And we've been preparing for this moment our entire evolutionary history. The transmission cut out, and the Indomitable's icon on the tactical display began moving toward the approaching Kithara swarm at maximum acceleration. "Is she insane?" whispered the navigation officer, an elderly Saturnian whose gaseous form was practically vibrating with anxiety. "No," Zexhai said quietly, watching the lone human ship race toward certain death. "She's human, and that might be the only thing that can save us." The Indomitable was Earth's newest and most advanced warship, a sleek predator built from lessons learned in humanity's violent past. Unlike the Coalition's bright, elegant vessels that spoke of evolved civilizations and peaceful intentions, the human ship looked like what it was, a weapon designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing aboard the ship's bridge. Colonel Chen moved with practiced efficiency between her stations. Her crew of 47 men and women represented the very best Earth had to offer, each one a volunteer who had signed up knowing they might never see home again. "Major Rodriguez, status on our weapons systems," Chun ordered as she settled into the captain's chair. "All systems green." "Colonel," replied her second-in-command, a scarred veteran of the Titan campaign. "Plasma cannons charged and ready. Nuclear arsenal fully loaded. And our special package is ready for deployment when you give the word." Chun nodded. The special package was humanity's newest gift to the galaxy, a weapon system based on technology, recovered from ancient human ruins on Mars, something their ancestors had built long before they reached the stars. As if they had always known this day would come. "Colonel, we're receiving multiple targeting locks from the Kithara fleet," reported the sensor operator. "They're launching attack formations. Estimated time to weapons range, 43 minutes. "Good," Chun said, her voice carrying across the bridge with absolute certainty. "That gives us time to reach the refugee convoy first." She touched a control on her armrest, opening a ship-wide communication channel. "All hands, this is the Colonel. In 39 minutes, we're going to do something that every tactical manual says is impossible. We're going to fight our way through the largest enemy fleet in recorded history to save 3 million civilians. Some of you might be wondering if we can actually pull this off." She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the ship. "The answer is yes. Not because we're faster or stronger or smarter than the enemy, but because we're human and humans don't quit. We don't surrender. We don't run away when people need our help. Our ancestors faced extinction events, ice ages, and global wars. And they survived by doing one thing: they never stopped fighting." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Murphy felt a familiar surge of pride as he listened to the colonel's words. His grandfather had fought in the Third World War, and his great-grandfather, before him, had served during the climate wars. The Murphy family had been building and fixing human war machines for 6 generations, and he wasn't about to let that tradition end here. "You heard the colonel," Murphy called out to his team as they made final preparations. "We're not just fighting for the galaxy. We're fighting to prove that humans belong among the stars. Let's show these alien bastards what Earth's children can do." Throughout the ship, Similar scenes played out as humanity's finest prepared for what many believed would be their final battle. In the weapons bay, Gunnery Sergeant Williams ran one last check on the plasma cannon arrays, remembering her daughter's face from their last video call. In medical bay, Dr. Patel organized his supplies while humming an ancient human song about impossible odds and unlikely heroes, the Cathara. Fleet ahead of them was a nightmare made manifest. Their ships moved with the fluid grace of living creatures, their hulls covered in what looked like organic armor that pulsed with veins of bioluminescent energy. Intelligence reports suggested that each ship was partially alive, grown rather than built, and powered by the psychic energy of its victims. Colonel, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Cathara vessel, the communications officer reported. Put it through. Chun ordered. The hologram that appeared was something that had haunted Coalition nightmares for months. The Cathara overlord was a towering creature of chitinous armor and writhing tentacles, its face a mass of compound eyes that seemed to stare directly into the viewer's soul. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal and screaming wind. Human vessel, you approach your extinction with admirable speed. Your species will make excellent additions to our biomass. Surrender now, and your death will be swift. Chun stood up from her chair and walked toward the hologram until she was close enough to see her own reflection in the alien's multifaceted eyes. Unknown creature, she said in a voice that could have cut steel. I am Colonel Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, representing the third planet of the Sol System. My species has a message for you. She leaned closer to the projection, and when she spoke again, every human on the ship could hear the echoes of their entire violent, stubborn, magnificent history in her voice. We don't surrender. We don't submit. And we sure as hell don't die easy. If you want us, come and take us. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent except for the